Hello and welcome to Website Accessibility. Thank you for joining us today. Our objectives are to learn about new federal accessibility requirements for local government websites, to learn how to evaluate your current website and plan for improvements, and to learn about tools to help you create an accessible website. There is a lot to website accessibility and accessibility in general, and I am not an expert, but I am living proof that you too can learn about website accessibility and best practices and where to go for more information to better serve your community. So first, we might talk about why we want to comply with accessibility requirements. And like I said in the first slide, there are federal requirements from Title II of the ADA that requires state and local governments to make sure their services, programs, and activities are all accessible to people with disabilities. It applies to all services, programs, or activities of state and local governments from A to Z, adoption services to zoning regulation. This includes all services and that they offer online and through mobile apps. And in April 2024, the Department of Justice issued its final ruling revising the regulation implementation Title II to establish those requirements, including the adoption of specific technical standards for making accessible programs, services, and activities. So this needs to be websites need to be federally compliant by April 2026. So that is a year from now. You might wonder why we do this, because libraries are for everyone. It's not just the basic rule of accessibility is that accessibility is essential for some, but useful for all. Accessibility isn't for one person or one specific type of person. Accessibility, like libraries, are for everyone. So in order to best serve your communities and your patrons, you want to make sure they can access your web content. W3, which is w3.org, is the main rule on accessibility. Their website has extensive guidelines, regulations, tools, etc. And one of the things that they have are user cases. They've created personas. They have a ton of different personas of types of people, who they are, what they do on the internet, and why accessibility is important to them, which helps you expand the type of, when you start thinking about accessibility, it starts expanding what it means to be accessible. When you have examples, and when you think that these examples could be patrons in your community who use the library, I'm sure that just as I've been talking about this, you've thought of at least 3 different accessible users of your library. Some of W3's example personas include, excuse me, Lexi, an online shopper with color blindness, Sophie, a basketball fan with Down syndrome, and Ian, a data entry clerk with autism. What's interesting about these user personas is it shows example barriers to website accessibility, and then makes some suggestions on how to work around those barriers to make content accessible. So in the example of Ian, a data entry clerk with autism, he's very familiar with new technologies. He's very comfortable using computers and using the internet, but barriers would include things like fancy language and metaphors on a website, where things are non-literal text. Heading structures, if pages aren't organized in a consistent layout or have a consistent navigation from page to page, those are examples of barriers that for that particular type of user. If you're thinking about accessibility for another type of user, maybe somebody with a visual impairment, you need to think about alternative text on images that are going to be read by screen readers. So it's interesting and really helpful to look through some personas on the W3 website to think about some accessibility that might not come to mind right away. So just remember, libraries are for everyone, and that includes all different user types. One of the things we want to do is think about accessibility first. Don't assume anyone can see or hear your content. I think that goes kind of contrary to what we might instinctually believe. But once you start shifting in your mindset to that, if you put an image up and you just want the image to speak for itself, if somebody cannot see that image, it cannot speak for itself. And the same goes for sound. If you're showing a video with lots of talking, you want to make sure there's closed captioning on there or real-time captioning for users who cannot hear as well or have audio impairments. You also want to always use embedded accessibility tools to address issues during your product creation. So whether you're creating a PowerPoint or a PDF or any other something that goes on your website, you want to use the embedded accessibility tools within the product when possible, because those are most compatible with what you're trying to do. And then the third one is kind of a baseline for use in general. Don't share content without checking and fixing accessibility issues. This is a mindset that can be a different, can create a different challenge. If somebody forwards you something that you want to distribute out, like we often do in libraries, but what they forwarded you isn't accessible, it's a best practice to start running things through an accessibility checker and making that content accessible. And if people start making their content accessible from the go, there's less needing to correct content and fix content before sharing. It's always easier for all three of these things. It's always easier to start with accessibility instead of retrofit for accessibility. You can think about that in the same way as a building. It's a lot easier to build something with accessibility in it at the get-go than it is to go back and change the stairs to ramps or change the stairs to elevators or anything like that. If you start from the get-go, thinking about accessibility and you build it in from the beginning, it's a practice that eventually will just become what you do when you're creating, they say products and content. So that's some important accessibility guidelines to just follow. And like I said, it does become second nature. So you might be wondering how to make a website compliant. Like I said, you want to embed your accessibility in early while building a site. It's just much easier. That's not to say it's impossible if you already have a website built. If that's the case, the next step would be the WCAG audit. There are a few tools that I'll go over where you can just copy and paste your website in there and it will tell you, oh, color contrast might not be right, or there's blinking, moving text over here, which can be really distracting and problematic for a lot of different reasons. But it will give you what category and some suggestions on how to fix it. And the other thing you want to do to make a website compliant is use some assistive technology testing. So if you're going to have somebody who is unable to use a mouse and they may be keyboard only, you need to be able to make sure that the tab, assistive technology tab, works correctly, or any other sort of assistive tech that you're using. You want to make sure to test it, not just to have it available. You want to make sure that it works correctly. So you heard me mention the WCAG. I continually refer to it as the WAG. I know that it is not the WAG. It is just easier for me to allude to it when calling it the WAG. That stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. I believe we're in version 2.2 right now. Covers a wide range of recommendations for making content more accessible. By following these guidelines, content is made more accessible for people with disabilities, including blindness and low vision, deafness and hearing loss, limited movement, speech disabilities, photosensitivities, and any combination. And it also includes learning disabilities and cognitive limitations. It is not comprehensive, just the wide range of humanity. There's always going to be a new thing. So this is a guideline and starting points, and is really, really helpful for addressing any kind of device that can access the web. So laptops, mobile phones, standalone kiosks, maybe like self-checks, desktop computers, etc. Like I said at the beginning, accessibility is essential for some, but useful for all. So following these guidelines make web content more usable to all users in general, not just users with disability. There's 4 main categories of the WAG. Like I said, it's not the WAG. Um, the acronym for them is POUR. It is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable was one we'll go through first, providing text alternatives for non-text content, providing captions and other alternatives for multimedia, creating content that can be presented in different ways, included by assistive technologies without losing meaning, and making it easier for users to see and hear content. Operable would include making all functionality available from a keyboard, giving users enough time to read and use content for things like moving pages. Best practice would to not use content that causes seizures or physical reactions, sometimes blinking content, moving content, things like that that are technically extra and do not contain a lot of functionality. Operable would also include helping users navigate and find content and making it easier to use inputs other than the keyboard. Understandable, it makes things understandable, making text readable and clear, making content appear and operate in predictable ways, and helping users avoid and correct mistakes. And then robust would be to maximize compatibility with current and future user tools. I think the future user tools is a very interesting concept to think about personally. So now that I've gone through what those are, you might say, what do I need to do? What on earth, how do I figure this out for my website? I pulled a few accessibility checkers that you can run pages through. These tools will be available in the link in the video on an Aspen page. I will show an example using the Wave Accessibility Checker, just so you have an idea of what it looks like. And I also want to highlight this third bullet point. The w3.org tools list includes something like 75 different accessibility checkers. Most include a paid version. Some do include a subscription fee or a fee-based option. There are also quite a few accessibility tools that have extensions for your internet browsers, which can be really helpful to download for different types of internet browsers. So then you can run accessibility tools on your pages a lot easier than running it on a separate web page. On that tools list, it also includes a lot of general accessibility checkers, but then there are also some more specific and more narrow ones. A color contrast checker that can be really helpful. There are resources specifically for coders on that tool list, as well as designers. So some things get pretty specific and granular. Other things, if you are a solo website editor, you just plug and play the information on from the library onto the greater website. That can be a helpful tool, and that can be helpful too. And I would encourage that these tools are used by your larger organization. If the library does not have a standalone website and maybe is a piece of a larger government website, if it is independently hosted, then and you have a little more control over your own page, I would definitely recommend using a plugin to check these things out. But like I said, if you're part of a larger organization, or if you are one of the lucky ones who gets to contract out for your website, I would encourage you to include accessibility in your contract with your website provider if that's not already there. So I'm going to switch my screen really quickly to show this wave accessibility checker. That's the one that I find really helpful. That's one I've used and am most familiar with. So that's the one I would. So this is a new web page on the state libraries page that we ran through this web accessibility evaluation tool called WAVE. If you go, I'll show you from the front. This is what the homepage looks like. There's this ability to plug the browser plugin, but this is just if you went to the website. I'm going to paste in the Federal Library Funds at Work page. And it's going to run this accessibility checker and show you over here, oh, there's 2 errors, 0 contrast errors, 16 alerts, features, structural elements. You can really, really get into it. It might look a little overwhelming right at the get-go, but it's not so bad. You can also turn off the stylization of the page. I prefer to leave it on because it looks a lot more like what the page, what most people are going to log in and see. This takes away a lot of the extra formatting. So I'll leave that styles on. But so you can see the summary of what it says about the page. You can also scroll down over here to see the whole page. And then you can see by scrolling over things, there is alternative text present here. Great. So that's a green for go, red for stop, yellow for caution. But if you are not able to see color, they use these similar X for no. It's also in red. Caution looks like a traffic caution exclamation point in a yellow triangle, and green in a mark in a circle, green for go. But you can just kind of go through, you can scroll over things. It shows you what this alternative text for this image of this bar graph down here. It shows a timeline showing the overlap of LSTA grants to states 2023, 2024, and 2025. So if you were unable to see that, a screen reader would read that description so that you know that there would be an image there, and that is what it shows, a timeline showing the overlap of LSTA grants to states 2023, 2024, 2025. This is just an example. I intentionally use a page that doesn't have a ton of errors, which is great. These H5, and this is an alert right here. So if we click on the alert, the heading level is skipped. So that means on a screen reader, it might not read things in order because it reads in order of heading levels. So if you might wonder, you might think aesthetically things going from header level 1 to header level 4 look better visually, but it's not actually accessible. So running something through this can be really helpful to ensure that when somebody is unable to visually read your content and is having it read to them, it's being read in the correct order so that it's understandable content. So that's just an example. This shows that it's an uploaded PDF. If you click on it, a link to a PDF document is present. If you link out to lots of PDF documents, you will want to also make sure that those PDF documents are accessible. Or if you link out to any sort of document or content that you have control of uploading. If you link out to another website, you're kind of out of that's out of your purview of ability to control. But if you're linking out to something you do have the control of making accessible, that would be highly, highly recommended. In this bottom footer of the page, this is standard across all state library pages. It's good to see, no errors. State Library is committed to accessibility for our web content so that all users can best utilize our web content. I'm going to show you the list of resources as well. I need to move my Zoom bar quickly so you can see. This evaluation tools list that I mentioned was the third bullet point on that list. I just wanted to give you a view of some of the things that they have on here. This is another accessibility checker, very similar to Wave. It shows its compliance with ADA and others around the world, which is kind of cool. It shows on this right-hand side if it is, this one is free, what languages it shows. If it was a plugin tool, it would also be listed here on this right-hand side. But there's a ton of tools on here. Like I said, some are more geared towards specific developers or designers or content creators, just depending on what it is. For example, this Axe development tool linter, this is far above my understanding, personally. But if this kind of thing really interests you, or if you start to feel passionately about it, the W3 website is the de facto source, and you can learn so much on here, and maybe you'll go down this developer rabbit hole. So anyway, I just wanted to show there's some specific color contrast checker, like I mentioned, all kinds of different specific resources. So that's that. I'm going to eventually go back to the PowerPoint, but while I'm here on the internet, I'll also show you if you have more interest in learning about Title II from the ADA. This is a basic fact sheet from the ADA website. Oh, I don't know why it scrolled all the way down here, but it's got more information about what the ADA is, what Title II is, and kind of what it means and why they're doing it. So if you have more questions, this is a great resource for you. The ADA website has a ton of resources just about accessibility in general. The Americans with Disabilities Act is excellent and really inclusive to our society. So I think that's all I wanted to show online. So let me stop and then go back to the PowerPoint. There isn't a ton. Oh, actually, I think I can go to PowerPoint from here. I can. Oh, the accessibility fundamentals, and I wanted to mention there's a Digital Accessibility Foundation's free course on the W3 website as well. If you find yourself really passionate about this. Accessibility fundamentals is a page on there that really just starts from the very beginning, but there are hundreds of pages on the W3 website that I would highly recommend viewing for specific guidelines and more information. So this is where we would take questions. Should there be any questions from the audience? Like I've said before, I am not an expert on accessibility. I have worked on library websites in the past where accessibility was something that we really strived to prioritize. It's easier to start from the beginning building an accessible website than it is to go back and make things accessible, but that does not mean you cannot. You, in fact, really should go back if you do a website check and find it's not accessible. As librarians, for library websites to be accessible, it's a really good way to lead by example, to include all members of your community and all of your patrons.
Corey, I did have a question. So,
Yes,
especially with websites, we have a lot of libraries that have maybe older websites or websites that they haven't, don't have somebody to help them maintain. So, from your experience, what's a good starting point, especially if we have an older website, to get started in doing these updates?
definitely run your website through a checker. Run a website through a checker. They'll give you suggestions on how to fix things. Um, I think the most common errors that are make things inaccessible are things like alternate image text, and header sequence. Those are pretty common because if you are not visually impaired, you might not think about that as if it's just, especially if it's a decorative picture versus an informational picture. Some images are just there because they look nice. Some images might have text in them. That's something that can be really hard as well. If it's an image of text, you have to write out everything it says in that alternate image. But to answer your question, how do you start? I would pick one thing. If you run your website through and you see, oh, all of my contrast isn't accessible. Maybe there's 6 different things. I would pick one thing and go through that one thing first. Um, there might be other people who say do it page by page. That works too if you have a good strategy for it. It depends on how many pages your library website might have. Sometimes people just have like maybe a home page and an about page, and then they link out to the catalog. But if you have multiple pages, it also is a good exercise for you to see how your website is laid out. That's not necessarily an accessibility thing, but just while you're working on the website and working in the and seeing that you're duplicating your efforts to make something accessible in 4 different places, that might make you think again about how your website is designed, and is it user friendly. And I think we use the term user friendly, but sometimes we mean accessible. I think I just keep repeating it. Accessibility is not exclusively for somebody with a disability or somebody with a cognitive learning ability. Um, it really is for everyone. I think one of those interesting user cases that they have when they have the personas, somebody with arthritis who can't use a mouse, um, that kind of thing, that you realize how many different ways you can be differently abled in the world, and that a lot of websites aren't built for the everyday person. They're built for somebody without any qualms about using the website. but yeah, I would pick one thing to focus on. Once you get through that, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? There's
Yeah.
not, give yourself plenty of time. You don't need to say, oh my gosh, my website needs to be accessible by Friday. Because unless you have, a 40-hour work week to devote to this and only this, and I don't know anybody who has, gaps and gaps of free time like that. Um, if you have somebody that you can, it can also be a really nice project for an intern if you don't have the capacity, but maybe you have somebody, I don't know if it's something you could have a volunteer do, I do not know, but if you had like a tech volunteer who is really interested in that kind of thing, this would be a great project. But it's definitely something to not to avoid, because it's just
Right.
going to continue to build and
Yeah.
not get
Yeah,
any more
one of the
accessible.
things that you said early on was, talking about the new regulations and that local and state government websites need to comply with these new regulations. So I think, what that made me think about too, I think we have a number of libraries who have their website hosted by their city or county. And that's a great opportunity to connect with, the webmaster or whoever is maintaining those websites and just lean on that person for assistance, advice, kind of timeline on how your website provider is going to deal with the change in regulations and that. But then the correlate to that is that we've got a lot of libraries who don't have that kind of support. And so, do you have any thoughts about, you know that you need to do this, and you might have identified some of the things that you start with, but who should you reach out to if you don't have a webmaster or that person?
I would be curious if you don't have a webmaster, that person who is running the website for the city or county. And they also need to be compliant. A lot of smaller communities, it might be somebody who's not well versed in web editing. It might be just an added on thing to your job as the librarian, as your job as the treasurer, as your job as the this, that, the other. It might be something that city or county governments could find a budget for a one-time contract to hire somebody. This is something that can be done remotely, right? This is definitely not something that is an in-person job. It's an online job. But it might be that you can pay for 10 hours of website work or something like that, especially if it's a shared government page so that it's not exclusively coming out of a library's budget. Um, like I showed the state library page is pretty good with accessibility because it's something we prioritize. But so that means you don't have to think about the shared catalog. That is not something you need to worry about as far as accessibility goes. Um, it's really just your own pages. But that's what, if there's not somebody within your organization or larger organization who is working on the website regularly, or their webmaster is part of their job or is their job. Um, and it's not something that you could build the time in for. I understand people are really busy and it's just one more thing and it's not a priority because, well, the website works. I get that. But we want to make it work optimally and we want to make it work for everybody. If you cannot find that time and build it on your schedule, block off your calendar so that's not an uninterrupted time, because you have to learn it too. Like I understand that it's not just, oh, you get in and do it. It's something you have to learn first. Um, and if you don't do it if you only do it once every month, you relearn it every month. That's really challenging. I would really look into pooling resources with other departments in your city or county to see if you could hire a one-time contract. It's not a new employee. You don't have to do a benefits. There's not an ongoing cost. And if it's not something that your city or county government can do, it might be something that your friends or foundation group could do. to finance that kind of a thing for you. You might have to look at contracts with outside vendors paid for by outside groups for a city county website. But if your website is hosted on something like Wix or something independently, like I can't think of another website provider off the top of my head, but if it's a content management system that's independent of your local government website, I think that a Friends and Foundation group could absolutely pay for a one-time contract gig to get it up to speed. And then it would be a best practice to learn how to create accessible content so that next time you go in there and edit your website, you don't have to go back and make it accessible after the fact. You just made it accessible from the beginning. Those would be my recommendations. So these are the three basic things to think accessibility first. Don't assume anyone can see or hear your content. Always use the embedded accessibility tools while you're during product creation, product being your PDF, your website, anything on there. And then don't share products or content without checking and fixing accessibility issues. Those really are best practices to make the information that we share available to everybody. So that is really the basics. It's a lot of information. But like I said, I'm not an expert in this. I learned about website accessibility when I was a librarian at Bozeman Public Library. Through the IT, we're fortunate enough to have a webmaster for the city of Bozeman, but he did not really do a whole lot with the library page. He taught us how to do it ourselves. So if I can do it, you can do it too. That's what I'm trying to say there. We have this great evaluation. The state library loves data. It helps us best inform what and how we can better serve our library community. So by filling this form out, it is incredibly helpful. And that's all. I'm happy to answer questions. If you contact me via email or by phone, I will likely refer you out to the w3.org page because that's where I have learned so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about website accessibility. It's really important and I feel very strongly about it. So I'm really glad that people want to learn more as well.